Hey guys, welcome back to More English with Dry. Today I'm going to be taking you through AQA Language Paper 1 Section A. This video is a short summary of how you might approach the paper. Specifically, I'm going to be giving you some writing frames and some timing advice on how you would go through each question to make sure you maximise the mark that you end up. Now, the paper we're looking at today is taken from the wonderful The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. It's a fantastic book. I really recommend anyone out there read it. And this section here is going to be available on the website, but also if you wish to pause the video to read it in more detail, you can do. So as you can see, it is a usual Language Paper 1 fiction extract in terms of length and in terms of style. This is taken from near the beginning of the book, not the opening page of the book per se, but a specifically difficult to read and climactic part near the beginning. So, your initial step would be to read the source. You're going to spend 15 minutes doing that for the first time. Read it slowly and carefully, and make sure you highlight any keywords or phrases that you've not seen before or that you may not know the meaning of. Question 1 you're going to spend 4 minutes on. It's a simple question, it's worth 4 marks, and you're not going to spend any more time than that. You need to reread the specific section you're given, so for example lines 1 to 10, and then you're always going to be asked to list 4 things. Now the focus will depend on what the paper is about, but it's just something to be aware of that you will always have to do roughly the same thing. Question 2 is always language analysis. You're going to spend 8 to 10 minutes in order to get the 8 marks available. Again, you'll be given a short extract to read. In this, I recommend you underline 2 quotations that contain interesting language or imagery, and then you're going to have to analyse the effects of them on the reader and talk about the effectiveness of the writer's methods. Question 3 is the trickiest one in this paper. It is about structure, and it's the only question in the paper where you have to talk about the source as a whole. It's again 8 to 10 minutes because it's only 8 marks, but if you manage your time well enough, you will get to spend a bit longer on it. You're going to be asked to think in detail about the source as a whole and explore how the writer structures this text. So, looking at the focuses at the beginning, the end, the middle, and any turning points you might find. Question 4 is the biggest one. It's 20 marks, so I'm recommending you spend between 18 and 20 minutes on it. Once more, you'll be given some selected lines, usually from a certain one and right until the end of the extract, and then you're going to have to either agree or disagree with a statement from a student or an imagined reader of the novel. You're going to try to write 3 to 4 paragraphs here, but this one is all about evaluating how well the writer creates a specific sense. So it might be how well the writer creates a tone or how well the writer creates a feeling in the reader. Okay, so reading the extract, here are just some quick tips for you. There's usually going to be a glossary for words you may not know the definitions of, so make sure to look out for the little numbers or footnotes at the end of words, because then you will get a list of what these words actually mean at the end of the extract. For questions that tell you to only look at specific sections, draw a bracket around them, because this will help you to avoid answering about the wrong sections. This paper is all about how writers use narrative and descriptive techniques to captivate and interest the reader. So in questions 2, 3 and 4 you must always analyse specific choices the writer has made and evaluate how effective they are at making you engage with the story, characters and themes they are describing. Question 1, list 4 things. The example question here from the Hate You Give paper is list 4 things that Khalil does in lines 1 to 10. Now the tips here are simple. Always write your answers in full sentences. Some people say it's not necessary, but I always think it's better not to take the chance. Only write 1 piece of information per line as well. If you write multiple, the marker will only mark the first 4 things you say, and then you risk losing out. You can either copy directly from the text or paraphrase, but do not copy out long full sentences. Only include information that involves the focus of the question, so in this case, what the character Khalil does and not anyone else. Question 2, how does the writer use language? Again, as I've said, you'll be given a focus section, so look in detail at this extract from lines 11 to 25 of the source. Now in an actual AQA paper, this section would actually be printed out in a specific small box to help you out. The question is, how does the writer use language? Now, it will always have a more clear focus after this based on the extract. In this case, it's to create a sense of fear and menace in the extract. You could include the writer's choice of words and phrases, language features and techniques, sentence forms. Now there's 8 marks on offer for this question. As always, the AQA are being a little bit euphemistic. When it says you could do this, what they really mean is they want you to do those 3 things. So, my suggested writing frame is a simple petal paragraph structure. If you're not familiar with this, it's very similar to most writing frames in English, peel paragraphs, or anything like that. It's essentially inviting you to make a point sentence where you engage with the question. You then give evidence in the form of a quotation. You describe the effect of this quote by looking at specific literary techniques, and then you analyse the effect by looking at keywords and connotations. And there I've given you a little prompt to go even further in depth to try and help you really get to grips with it. And then finally link back to the question, therefore the writer successfully creates fear and menace by. So as I said, there's only 8 marks. You're looking for 2 paragraphs here. That would be the best way to go about managing your time, and probably the most realistic that you could do in the 8 to 10 minutes that you've got. Now, question 3 is the toughest one. How does the writer structure the text? It's the only question in the paper that will ask you to talk about the whole of the source. Now, that means you are expected to talk about the entirety of the source, right from the beginning to the end. Now, as I've said, this text is an extract from the second chapter of a novel. How has the writer structured it to interest you? You could write about what the writer focuses your attention on at the beginning of the source, how and why the writer changes this focus as the source develops, and then any other structural features that interest you. Now again, the AQA want you to write about all 3 of those things. So here, rather than giving you a specific frame, I've given you some sentence starters for each specific part. So, from the beginning of the extract, it's always important to say something to the effect of, the text focuses on, or it begins with the sentence, to begin with, the writer draws our attention to. This shows that you are answering the question and also makes sure that you are actually taking the entirety of the source as your evidence. For the turning point, now this is something you have to find yourself. It will always be either a section where a climactic event happens. In the case of this extract, it's where Khalil is shot by the police officer. In other sources, it could be less surprising. It could be the introduction of a new character. It could be the introduction of a new setting. It could just be a general change in atmosphere or mood. But that is something you need to identify. However, here there is a turning point when. Yet the writer deliberately turns the story around when. Around the middle of the extract, you get the idea. And then for the second section, the text narrows down so that the reader, in the second half of the text, the writer changes the focus. This links the 2 halves of the text together because the reader has already seen, heard. We understand at this point, we are deliberately presented with a direct contrast. The structure is effective because by first showing, this makes us reevaluate our initial impression of. Now, these are just some of the sentence starters you could use. But basically, what you have to do is you have to talk about how the source changes, how the writer decides to change something to make you more interested, that makes you understand a character better, that makes you change your opinion of a character, that makes you, in general, reevaluate what you have already thought. And then, as a possible other way, you could discuss climax or anticlimax, because that is always a structural device. This creates a sense of climax which the writer deliberately relieves the tension in this moment by. I am going to do a more extended video on question 3 later, so stay tuned for that if you are struggling with it. Finally, question 4, to what extent do you agree? Now this seems like it's persuasive writing, although it's not. You will be given a section to look at, but this will always be the final part. So for instance, line 30 to the end. Then you'll get given a statement. One reader said, you can feel a huge sense of anger and injustice when reading these lines. Our sympathy is with Star and Khalil. To what extent do you agree? Now, you can agree and disagree, that's absolutely fine, although this is not an exercise in using your persuasive writing skills. This is an exercise in evaluating how writers create an impact on the reader. So you're going to take those things from the question, i.e. huge sense of anger and injustice, and here you're going to look for the nature of the injustice, how the writer creates sympathy, and support your comments with references from the text. Again, all of these things are essential to get the 20 marks. So in my writing frame, it is petal again, however with slightly more specific directed starters. I mainly agree with the reader because, now it could be I strongly agree, I don't agree, but either way you have to address the statement straight away because that is part of answering this question. Then always a quotation in this part of the excerpt, the writer says, and then here the writer is using to make the reader feel. That is a simple case of you saying a technique and saying what it's doing. Again, furthermore, the language used has connotations of helping to create the atmosphere of. Just something I always suggest you do is you really drill down into a quote to try and get the most out of it from an AO2 linguistic point of view. Now this final part then is extremely important. This effectively creates the feeling of. Now, what you're doing here is you're relating back to the focus of the question, but you are evaluating. You are saying how good something is. You are saying how good the writer is at making you feel a certain way. Or in this case, how good the writer is at helping you feel angry or that there is a sense of injustice. Now for this, you're looking to write at least 3 paragraphs for your 20 marks. Basically, just keep writing until your time is up. I hope you found this video helpful. Stay tuned for more detailed videos about specific language paper questions. Good luck.